My boyfriend used to tell everyone he was proud of me. He said I was brilliant, ambitious, destined to do something important. But that was when my dreams were still smaller than his. The moment I started earning more, getting promoted, and becoming the successful one in the relationship, his pride turned into resentment. Eventually, he told me my success made him feel like less of a man. So he left. 5 years later, he walked into the company I had built from nothing. He was holding a resume, and he needed a job. My name is Laura. I'm 33 years old, and if I ever truly loved someone, it was Daniel. We met in college when we were both studying business. Daniel was the kind of person who could walk into a room and make everyone notice him without even trying. He was charming, funny, confident, and completely certain that he was going to become somebody. I was different. I was quieter, more cautious, the kind of student who sat in the front row, took notes in 3 different colors, and still went home wondering whether she was intelligent enough to belong there. The first time Daniel and I really spoke was in the library. I had been staring at the same assignment for almost an hour. Eventually, I closed my laptop and muttered that maybe I had chosen the wrong major. Daniel was sitting at the table across from me. He looked up and said, "You know what's strange about you?" I assumed he was about to make a joke. Instead, he leaned forward and said, "Whenever you talk about this stuff, your eyes light up. You understand more than you think you do." I laughed nervously. "You don't know me." "I know confidence when I see it," he said, "even when the person carrying it hasn't noticed it yet." That sentence stayed with me for years. Daniel was the first person who seemed to see something in me that I couldn't see in myself. We started studying together, then eating lunch together, then finding excuses to spend time together even when we had nothing left to study. By graduation, we had been dating for almost 3 years. Back then, we felt like a team. We talked about opening a business together someday. We imagined the apartment we would have, the places we would travel, and the kind of life we would create. Daniel had the big ideas. I made the spreadsheets. He dreamed out loud. I quietly worked out how to make those dreams possible. And for a long time, that balance worked. After graduation, I accepted an entry-level position at a digital marketing agency. The pay was low, the hours were long, and most of my work involved fixing mistakes no one else wanted to deal with. But I loved it. Every week, I learned something new. I learned how to manage campaigns, negotiate with difficult clients, interpret consumer data, and turn vague ideas into strategies that actually worked. For the first time, I felt as though I was building a professional identity that belonged entirely to me. Daniel's path was less stable. He worked at a startup for 6 months before it ran out of funding. Then he joined a friend's e-commerce project, but they disagreed about money and stopped speaking. After that came a sales job, a consulting idea, and several projects that always seemed promising at the beginning but never lasted. None of that bothered me at first. Careers don't develop at the same speed. I understood that. Whenever Daniel became discouraged, I reminded him of everything he had once told me. "You're capable," I would say. "You just haven't found the right opportunity yet." But encouragement slowly became financial support. At first, I covered a dinner, then part of the rent, then the electricity bill because one of Daniel's clients had supposedly paid him late. Whenever I tried to discuss savings or stability, he became defensive. "Life isn't only about money, Laura." "I know that." "Then stop acting like every decision has to be part some 5-year plan." I usually backed down. I told myself that I was being too controlling, too anxious, too focused on the future. Then, 2 years into my job, I received my first major promotion. My agency had taken on a difficult client whose campaign was failing. I spent several weeks rebuilding the strategy, often staying at the office until nearly midnight. The new campaign exceeded every target. My boss called me into her office and promoted me to campaign coordinator. With the salary increase and performance bonuses, I would be earning almost twice what I had earned when I started. I bought a bottle of wine on the way home. Daniel was on the couch looking at his phone when I walked in. "I did it," I said. He looked up. "Did what?" "I got the promotion." For a second, I waited for the Daniel I had met in college, the man who had once looked across a library table and told me I was more capable than I realized. He smiled, but something about it felt delayed. Another promotion? He asked. It's my first official promotion. You know what I mean. I placed the wine on the table. My salary's going up too. How much? I told him. His eyebrows lifted. Wow. I waited. That's almost what two people make. I know, I can't believe it. Well, he said, looking back at his phone, good for you. I stood there for a moment, still holding my purse. That's it? What do you want me to say? I thought you would be excited. I am excited. You don't look excited. Daniel sighed. Laura, I said congratulations. Don't turn this into a problem. So I didn't. I opened the wine myself. That night was the beginning of something I didn't recognize until much later. The comments started as jokes. If I came home late, Daniel would say, the executive has finally decided to visit us. If I asked him to cook, he would answer, I thought rich people hired someone for that. When we split a restaurant bill, he would push it toward me and say, you can handle it. You're the successful one. He always smiled afterward, and if I looked offended, he accused me of losing my sense of humor. At first, I tried laughing with him. Then I tried reassuring him. Your salary doesn't determine your value, I told him one evening. Easy for you to say. I believed that before I got promoted. No, before you got promoted, we were equal. The word stayed in the room between us. Equal. Not loved, not connected, equal. As though our relationship had been a competition with a score neither of us had agreed to keep. I started becoming careful around him. When something good happened at work, I waited before telling him. If I received praise from a client, I minimized it. When my boss invited me to an industry conference, I described it as an obligation instead of an opportunity. Without realizing it, I had started editing my own life so Daniel wouldn't feel threatened by it. The worst part was that it worked. The less excited I appeared, the more comfortable he became. Then I planned a vacation for us. We had talked for years about visiting Portugal. I found affordable flights, a small hotel in Lisbon, and enough space in my budget to cover most of the trip without touching our savings. I printed the itinerary and placed it inside a card. For a moment, Daniel looked genuinely surprised. You booked this? I wanted us to do something together. With your money? With our time. That's not what I asked. I sat beside him. You've paid for things before. Not like this. It's a vacation, Daniel. It isn't a business transaction. I don't want to owe you. You wouldn't owe me anything. You always say that. Because it's true. He pushed the card onto the table. You don't understand what it feels like. What feels like? To always be the one underneath. I stared at him. Underneath what? You're always the one with the answers now. The money, the plans, the opportunities. You're always on top. I had never thought of us that way, but Daniel had. Maybe for a long time. I canceled the trip. Not because he asked me to, because going alone would have felt like admitting that our relationship was already ending. A few weeks later, we had dinner with several college friends. One of them had seen a campaign my team created and congratulated me. I saw your company mentioned in an article, she said. That campaign was yours, right? My team worked on it. That must have come with a nice promotion. Before I could answer, Daniel laughed. Oh, it did, believe me. I'm reminded of it every day. The table became quiet. One of our friends tried to change the subject, but Daniel continued. Laura's doing very well. Soon I'll be introducing myself as her unemployed boyfriend. I have never called you that, I said. It was a joke. No one laughed. Daniel leaned back in his chair. See, this is what I mean. She's a boss everywhere now. Everyone looked uncomfortable. I smiled because I didn't know what else to do, but inside, something shifted. I realized I'd spent months protecting Daniel from embarrassment while he had no problem humiliating me in front of other people. On the drive home, I confronted him. What you said tonight was cruel. It was honest. No, it was designed to punish me. For what? For succeeding. Daniel shook his head. There it is again. Everything is about your success. I brought it up because your job has become your entire personality. My job pays most of our bills. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Not because they weren't true, because I knew exactly where Daniel would take them. He looked out the window and didn't speak again for the rest of the drive. After that, he started pulling away. He stayed out later. He stopped asking about my day. He canceled plans and answered messages hours after I sent them. When I asked where he had been, he accused me of supervising him. When I gave him space, he said I no longer cared. There was no correct way to behave because the problem was no longer anything I was doing. The problem was what my presence forced him to confront about himself. One night, I found him sitting alone in the kitchen. No television, no phone, just Daniel staring at the table in the dark. I turned on the light. "We need to talk." He didn't argue. I sat across from him. "What is happening to us?" He rubbed both hands over his face. "I can't do this anymore." "Do what?" "This." He gestured between us. "Why?" "Because you're moving forward and I'm not. That doesn't mean we stop loving each other." "You don't understand." "Then explain it to me." Daniel looked directly at me. "I feel small when I'm with you." My throat tightened. "I have never tried to make you feel small." "I know." "Then why are you blaming me?" "I'm not blaming you." "Yes, you are. Every joke, every argument, every time you act as though my career is something I've done against you, you are blaming me." He looked away. "I thought I would be further ahead by now." "So did I, but I never stopped believing in you." "That makes it worse." "How?" "Because now I feel like someone you're waiting to catch up." I reached across the table. "I don't need you to catch up. I need you to stand beside me." Daniel moved his hand away. "I don't know how to do that." That was the most honest thing he had said in months. We ended our relationship that night. There was no dramatic screaming, no broken glasses, no final betrayal. Daniel packed a suitcase and stayed with a friend. 3 days later, he returned for the rest of his things. Before leaving, he stood near the front door and looked at me. "I am proud of you," he said. I almost laughed. "No, Daniel, you were proud of me when my potential was theoretical. You stopped being proud when it became real." He didn't answer. Then he walked away. Losing him hurt, but what hurt even more was realizing how much of myself I had already lost before he left. For months, I questioned everything. Maybe I had talked about work too much. Maybe I should have hidden the size of the raise. Maybe I should have let him pay for things he couldn't afford. Maybe I should have been softer, quieter, less visible. Then one evening, I told a friend that perhaps I could have saved the relationship by making Daniel feel more needed. She looked at me and said, "Laura, love shouldn't require you to become less so someone else can feel like more." That sentence broke something open in me. I stopped asking whether I had been too successful. I started asking why I had believed success required an apology. A year later, I left the agency. It wasn't an impulsive decision. I had spent months saving money, building contacts, and working with a few small clients outside my regular hours. I founded my own digital marketing company from a desk in the corner of my apartment. At first, it was just me. I handled strategy, invoices, sales calls, client emergencies, and every administrative task I had previously taken for granted. Some months were terrifying. There were nights when I stared at my bank account and wondered whether Daniel had been right about my obsession with plans and ambition. But every time fear told me to stop, I remembered how it felt to silence good news inside my own home. I refused to build another life in which I had to hide from my own potential. The agency grew slowly. Then one client referred another. A campaign performed better than expected. I hired my first employee, then my second. 3 years after opening, we had a team of 6 people and a real office. It wasn't a giant corporation, but it was stable. It was respected, and it was mine. 5 years after Daniel and I broke up, my operations manager walked into my office. "We have an applicant here for the junior account manager position," she said. "Isn't the interview tomorrow?" He mixed up a date. He says he can come back, but I have time now. I glanced at the resume she placed on my desk. Daniel Torres. For a moment, I thought there had to be another Daniel Torres. Then I saw the college listed beneath his name. My chest tightened. Did he ask for me? "No, I don't think he knows you own the agency." I could have left. I could have asked someone else to handle it without ever seeing him. Instead, I told my operations manager to conduct the interview exactly as she would with any other candidate. "I shouldn't be involved in the hiring decision," I said. There's a personal history." She nodded. A few minutes later, I stepped into the hallway. Daniel was sitting in the waiting area with a folder resting on his knees. He looked older, not dramatically older, just worn down in a way that confidence used to hide. When he saw me, he stood. "Laura?" "Hi, Daniel." He looked around the office, then at the company logo on the wall. "This is yours?" "I founded it 3 years ago." "I didn't know. I assumed you didn't." For a moment, neither of us spoke. "I'm looking for work," he finally said. "I understand. I've had a difficult year." "I'm sorry to hear that." He glanced down at the folder. "I know this is awkward. The operations manager will evaluate your application. I won't participate in the decision." His expression changed slightly. "You're not going to interview me? That wouldn't be appropriate." He nodded, although I could tell it wasn't the answer he had expected. Daniel completed the interview. He wasn't hired. Not because I stopped it. I had removed myself entirely from the process. The team chose another candidate with more recent experience and stronger references. A week later, Daniel sent me a message. "Congratulations, Laura. I'm glad you made it this far. I had a chance to grow beside you, and I wasted it." I read the message twice. Then I closed it without responding. There was nothing left to explain. For years, I had imagined that healing would arrive as some dramatic moment of justice. I thought I would need Daniel to regret leaving me. But sitting in that office, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel angry either. I simply saw him clearly. Daniel had not lost me because I earned more money. He had lost me because he needed my life to remain small enough for his to look bigger. And I had finally outgrown the version of myself who would accept that. Today, I still run the agency. Several of the people on my team are women who once doubted themselves the way I did in that library all those years ago. When they hesitate before presenting an idea, I encourage them to speak. When they minimize their own work, I remind them who created it. And when one of them apologizes for being ambitious, I tell her what I wish someone had told me sooner. Never apologize for becoming more capable, more confident, or more successful than someone expected you to become. The right person will not need you to fail in order to feel secure. They will not treat your success like evidence of their inadequacy. They will celebrate beside you, even when your paths move at different speeds. I want to be fair about one thing. I don't believe Daniel woke up one morning and decided to resent me. I think he had spent his entire life believing that a man was supposed to lead, provide, and remain ahead. When I began earning more, he didn't see two people succeeding differently. He saw himself losing. But understanding where his insecurity came from does not mean I had to accept the way he treated me. Pain can explain someone's behavior. It does not excuse it. A partnership is not a scoreboard. Love is not one person standing above the other, and support that disappears the moment you succeed was never support. It was approval with conditions. So let me ask you honestly, would you have stayed and tried harder to save the relationship, or would you have walked away rather than spend your life making yourself smaller? And when Daniel appeared at my company looking for work, would you have given him another chance? Drop your verdict in the comments. Like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Because here, one story always leads to another.